process, yet residents are being told there is one. The administrator, can someone explain what the waiver process is? Also, multiple departments in this town aren't following the same process. The school department follows a different APRA process than the clerk's office. Nothing's being standardized. To me, it's seeming that some of these APRAs are going to be looked at as, or the requests and the fees associated with them, and the waiver process is actually being used as a deterrent to public records and open government rather than as an asset. I don't have a problem with the fee structure. I understand that the state has a guideline regarding the APRA, and we can develop off of the APRA by ordinance. But right now, there's too many inconsistencies. People have been charged people are being charged post, access to the records. If you go to the school department, they'll charge you after the fact. There's no set standard yet. If I go to the town's website, there is a set process for actually pulling out the APRA request, but there's not one for a waiver process. How many residents have been charged a fee that weren't even notified there was a waiver process? I think the council, in the effort of open government, needs to look at maybe having the ordinance review committee put together an ordinance regarding how the waiver process is handled as well as the fee structure is handled. Right now, like I said, I believe it's being used as more of a deterrent rather than what it's intended for. There's no consistency in the APRA process, department to department, or even resident to resident, for that matter. If you go to the school department, and myself and Mr. Clifford had this discussion last 2 weeks ago, if you go to the school department, and tell me if I'm wrong, they'll notify you that you're gonna cost X amount, but you don't prepay, correct?
You don't prepay, but they make you commit in writing.
That you're
This
gonna.
is the estimate, and before they prepare the materials, you
Correct.
agree to pay.
Correct. So we don't have a process outlined, number one. Number two, there's been 4 charges for APRA requests. 2 of them are after they were filed and given to the resident. 2 of them are now pre-charges. If we're just gonna do things as we wish, I mean, that's basically what we're doing right now. As I determine we're gonna do it, that's how we're gonna do it. We need to set a standard and follow the standard. Whether it's prepayment, post-payment, but it needs to be discussed and brought up. It can't be used as a deterrent to open government, and that's the way I feel it's being used right now.
I would agree, consistency, continuity, it has to all happen, so we don't have that. We haven't seen a flurry of requests. And currently, if someone walked into, and I don't mean to put the town clerk on the spot, but I will bit. Someone walks into your office and asks for something, it's the first couple minutes for you to look for something.
First hour is free.
First hour, that's a lot of time, an hour. So, that's consistent, you've always done that, right? And God bless you for doing those things. So, there is that type of thing, that the first hour is free, and that's reflected in the state law as well. Is it not an hour with the state?
Yeah, just, Mr. Vice President, if I may, all the regulations are set by state, and it depends on the difficulty of retrieval and copying and preparation.
Correct.
And according to the state and the Attorney General's opinions, they tell us what to do. And if you have to, the process is pretty straightforward. You spend an hour.
Right.
If you have the paper readily available, you get it, you give it to somebody, 2 minutes. If you spend an hour and you determine it's gonna take 25 hours to get that thing, you notify the people in advance, it's gonna be 24 hours, because 1 hour is free, times 15. And according to the Attorney General's Department, you can request prepayment of that money.
Correct.
And the reason why you request prepayment is so that the clock stops ticking. The 20-day clock doesn't tick and cause you a problem. Make sure that you're gonna get paid and you don't get caught up against the 10 or 20-day clock. Very important. Don't lose sight that, especially in a small town like this, you're talking about the flurry.
Yep.
You wanna talk about it? The flurry is that the town has been very hamstrung, the employees. It has been just the opposite of what you represented. The town employees have been felt very overworked and very frustrated by the time pressure and the amount of work that's required to do this, and they were looking to make sure they complied with it, so they weren't in violation of the Attorney General's rules, and how to make sure that it gets done properly, town gets paid, and they can get it done timely.
Should it not be consistent, though?
It is consistent. If you ask for
So-
something that takes an hour, they
So-
won't charge you anything, and you'll get it in an hour.
Are we saying that it is consistent that every resident has been required to prepay for every APRA request that they have to pay?
No, it depends on what kind of time is involved, Councilman.
Well, you just said it's consistent, that's
It-
not consistent. You
well-
can't tell one resident that they have to prepay, and tell another resident they don't have to
Well,
prepay,
if
if it's gonna go over the set time.
If it's going to be a $350 payment, if the council doesn't want anybody to prepay, that's fine, but then that's the risk that you run. But the waiver has got nothing to do, this waiver thing has gotten misused. The waiver process is, an applicant can go to the Superior Court and request a waiver from the judge, saying, waive my fees after I paid it, or I will not pay it, and while they don't get the records, they go to court and they get a court order waiving the fees because they're getting the documents not for their purpose, but for the benefit of the world, or the town, or the state. They can go do that. But it's not like this, it's not like the town makes a waiver process. The waiver process is in the statute.
So there is no way that the administrator can waive fees? So
There
that's-
should be a waiver fee. The statute says it's $15 an hour after the first hour. The statute is clear.
I
First hour is free. No, the administrator doesn't waive
But there's
fees.
been correspondence from the town that there's a waiver process?
No. There's been correspondence from people to the town asking for a waiver.
I have the email from the town
Well, I
to
don't
the
know.
resident that says there is a waiver process. You may send the waiver request to the town administrator.
Well, I don't know.
So if that's being relayed out to residents, and then the town administrator is making the judgment call, yes or no, we're making up the rules as we go along. That's the problem.
Well, let me just go back a step. The way the law works is, once a response to an APR request is made from the clerk or whoever the designated APR officer is for the town, the applicant who's applied for it can make an appeal of anything. So, not a waiver, but an appeal of anything. It goes to the highest administrative officer of the town, that would be the administrator. They don't like that person's decision, then they can go to the Attorney General's office, or they can go to court. But that's by statute, that's not by the town's regulation. You can't say the appeal doesn't go to the administrator. The appeal goes to the administrator, and then from the administrator, it goes to the Attorney General or the Superior Court.
Right.
That's by state statute.
But where is that, if I go to the town's website right now, there is a 7 or 8 step process on how I file an APRA request, right? But I have correspondence from the town that says that there's a waiver process, but there's no correspondence on how to see the waiver process.
Well, that was obviously a
So
it should be an
what
appeal
I'm trying to
process.
get at is again, this is, if there's gonna be a waiver process, or if
There's no waiver process. It's an appeal process, and it's by state law. What they really should be doing is just referring them to state law.
but every resident should be afforded that opportunity, correct?
They are by state law.
Correct, but that's not the way it's been going thus far.
Everybody has state law at their available. Every correspondence should go out and say you have a right to appeal this.
Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, though, the APRA request, we can take that document off the website and throw it away because it's state law, right? Every resident has knowledge of the state law, they don't need a process out.
There's two different things. There's an application process
Correct,
to get APR documents.
correct,
Appeal from that process is state law.
correct.
It's not, we can't change that.
And I'm not saying we need to change it, but I'm saying it's not defined anywhere. And then where it gets into emails shooting back and forth across from residents to the town offices, the problem is we have a process that's outlined by state law on our website for how we take out an APRA request. That, it's state law how you do it. The first hour is free, $15, 15 cents a sheet, it's on our website. In the same APRA request statute is the process for seeking waiver, whatever you want to call it. That's also in there, but that's not listed anywhere on our website. So then residents get emails from the town that there's this process that doesn't exist because you're saying it's state law. Well, then why is
But
there?
it does exist because it is state.
Correct, but it doesn't exist on our town website. So now we get two residents who happen to be friends with each other. One saying, how come I was told that there's a process? And the other one saying, how come I wasn't told there was a process? And then this one said, how come I'm being charged this and I don't get to it, well, if there isn't a process, there isn't a process, that's fine, but the whole APRA should be outlined on the website, and it's not. And then the fact-
That's a town decision.
and then the fact that office to office within this town does it differently, I mean, if you're saying it's set by the state, how can each office do it differently?
I mean, the town should just be referring people to the state law. They shouldn't be reciting and repeating the state law. They
Okay,
should
first
just
of all, I need to weigh in here, because I have the email that
say, "I'm
is
doing email."
being questioned. Now, it was Madam Clerk to a resident who had an APRA request, and I'll keep any resident
No,
names.
use the name, it's public record, use the name.
All right, so, Mr. Vowles, to Mr. Vowles, in accordance, now this is exactly what Madam Clerk wrote to Mr. Vowles. In accordance with RIGL 38-2-8, you may wish to appeal this decision being a prepayment of $131. However, that's stated incorrectly. She's saying that you may appeal this decision to Town Administrator Hamilton, which you have through email. You may wish to file a complaint with the Department of the Attorney General. Now, if you look up RIGL 38-2-8, if any, which I did, as soon as I read RIGL 38-2-8, I looked up what it said. What it says is, if the Chief Administrative Officer of who owns the records decides that those are not public records, then that person can appeal to the Attorney General. It does not make any mention of any payment at all. So that was actually it should not have been stated that way, because
Can you read this sentence there, the second one?
this one?
Yeah.
I'm attaching a letter from the Department of Attorney General dated October 9th, 2015, that indicates that the town is allowed to require prepayment, which is true.
Yep.
I saw that letter as well. The town is allowed to require prepayment, and on this particular APRA request, I had many hours invested myself, because this particular APRA request, can I say what it was for?
No, but before you go further, Councilman, what you stated was an accurate statement of the law, what I just said. If an applicant does not like the ruling of the clerk, they can appeal to the administrator or the attorney general or the superior court. That's an accurate statement of the law. That's consistent with everything that's.
I'm not debating that, what I'm debating is.
If that's the language you're talking about,
No,
that's accurate.
That's not what I'm debating. What I'm debating is how come office to office in this town doesn't follow it? That's number one. And number two, how come it's changed resident to resident? Because it has. There's been 4 charges, and correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Clerk, there's been four residents charged for APRAs this year. 2 were prepayments, 2 were post-payment.
I know I did a list, I don't
Right.
remember exactly what it was.
So again, it's being decided based on.
Number of hours and time.
Then it needs to be
that's
clearly
required.
stated.
Well, we do, when we call them or respond to them, we tell them, look, we can get you this or this, but, you know, in order to get you the inordinate amount of stuff that you're asking for, it'll cost us, and we go to everybody and have to ask them. It's a very lengthy process.
Oh, and trust me, I've had this conversation with Madam Clerk that she is inundated with our APRA requests. My issue, like I said, with it is.
I'll give you an example. With the Attorney General's Department, there was a request for over 150,000 documents. The Attorney General's Department responded and said to that applicant, they sat down for an hour, they got everybody in the department together in a room for an hour. They had them go back to their office and determine how long it would take to get those documents. They put that together, determined it was going to take, I forget the number. They sent a letter back to that applicant, said it'll cost you $150,000 in a prepayment penalty. I mean, not prepayment fee. When you deliver us that check, we'll start getting them for you. We're not going to send people working for thousands of hours without that money.
So,
That wasn't, now the Attorney General doesn't do that all the time, Councilman.
Right.
Sometimes you walk in the Attorney General, they ask for a document, they pull it off the back of their desk and they, here it is.
but it's within the hour.
Oh, no, even if it's over an hour, if it's over an hour and if it only takes a couple of minutes, they don't charge per
Right.
payment, they say that's $25. So it depends, you're trying to apply a standard that is on a case-by-case analysis, and that's why the Attorney General wrote the letter that we requested and we got from the Attorney General. That letter that's included in the Attorney General is an official opinion of the Attorney General for that exact reason. It's a case-by-case basis. But if you want to say that every case is going to be the same, well, the problem with that's going to be that there may be somebody who gets told they have to come up with $1,000 or more, depending on what's involved. I don't know, I mean, that's your decision, but it's your decision, but understand what it means. It means that people that have to stop everything they're doing to go to work on this, which is fine. I mean, that's what the Attorney General says, you have maximum 30 days to do it.
Right.
But if it's gonna take 5,000 hours, we can tell the person it's gonna cost X amount of money, and if they don't pay it, the clock doesn't tick until they pay that money.
Right, but,
Which puts us in a good administrative position as a town, not to have to stop everything if somebody really doesn't wanna pay the fee.
and if it's a resident, you can tack on to the tax, you can put the lien on their taxes.
No, you can't. Not, this got nothing to do with that. You could never do that. This is an APR, because it's controlled by state law. I just want to be clear on it.
I'd just like to see some sort of consistency with it.
Mr. Solly, I just have one point, and I do believe that this is Rhode Island law, that schools and towns must remain separate. We can't have one process, and I agree with you, it
So
would make
so
sense.
you're telling me that the ATRA request set by the Rhode Island, the state of Rhode Island is gotta be separate because the schools and the towns have to be separate? That makes no
Because
sense.
they don't know, because who's gonna govern the process, Lindbergh or Hamilton?
It's one general law.
Yeah, but we're not, no, because we can't set ordinances. Now, I agree with you, it would make sense to have one consistent process.
Again, I
Can't
just
set
want
that.
to, can I get back to your point, Councilman, so that it's clear? I think your point is well taken, Councilman's point taken. First of all, by state law, it's either department by department, or agency by agency, or town, town government by town government. But once you make that decision, within the state law, within that state law, it's not by ordinance, within that state law, you have these tools at your availability to answer these complaints, these requests. If you want to, get some consistency, I guess you have to start saying, have a discussion with the administrator and say, how do we deal with ones that are 20 hours long to research, or 30 hours long? Or do you want to pick, I guess you could have that discussion. Because it seems to me you're focused in on how long it takes to research it, and if it takes too long, requesting a prepayment. I
Right.
think that seems to be the concern.
Right, the
Which
concern,
could
well,
use the
it's
discretion.
twofold. I mean, if I tell a resident that he has to pay me $500 for an APRA request, and it ends up costing him $400, okay?
Or you have to give the money back.
When do you get the money back? Because you want your money up front, so when do you get the money back?
As soon as you deliver the records.
So Ms. Todd's gonna have a checkbook to write checks for return money.
The law is clear on this. If you request a prepayment and it costs more, they don't get the records unless they pay more, and if they cost less, you have to give them the reimbursement.
At the same time.
At the same time.
Okay.
There's no, that is clear, that is all clear. The only thing that's not clear is, and it is clear, but I understand it can be difficult to understand, not understand from the point of view, from your perspective, but from the perspective is, once a town or a department or an agency is making a determination how long it's going to take to research, they have to make a strategic decision on how do we get this accomplished, and do we want to stop all our staff without prepayment? That is within the discretion, at least at this point, under state law, within that agency's person who is designated to respond, appeal to the administrator of this town, and then to the Attorney General or the Superior Court. That's the line of appeal. I'm just throwing out what I think is your concern, which is certainly viable.
Mr. President, just coming to the decision of how many hours it may take, depending on the magnitude of the request, is cumbersome. That in itself would set Madam Clerk the whole day to just figure out how much it's gonna charge. She's behind a day of work. However, I agree with the council solely, and that's why I put my name on this as well, there has to be consistency. If citizen A and citizen B comes in, they're both afforded an hour, no charge. If they're gonna charge for a piece of a standard, regular letterhead, 15 cents,